For as long as I could remember, I had imagined what my graduation day would look like. I'd see myself walking across that stage, cap balanced on my head, gown swaying, and my parents cheering from the front row. Mom tearing up, Dad clapping proudly. It wasn't just another ceremony to me. It was the moment I'd been working toward for years. The night before graduation, our house was buzzing with movement. I'd spent the last week making sure everything was perfect for the small celebration afterward. Fairy lights across the backyard, "Congratulations, Lily" banner on the fence, and a playlist of my favorite songs. My friends had promised to come by later to celebrate. I wanted my parents to finally see how hard I'd worked, how much this meant. Mom was on the phone with the caterer, confirming the cake and food delivery. "Yes, we'll need it by 5 tomorrow evening," she said, pacing the kitchen. I was standing nearby, carefully arranging the printed photos from my college journey onto a corkboard, a timeline of effort and memories. But not everyone shared my excitement. Chloe, my younger sister, sat slouched on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that permanent air of boredom she carried whenever I became the center of attention. "So this is all for you?" she asked suddenly, not looking up. I glanced at her, unsure how to answer without sounding defensive. "Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, Chloe. 4 years, remember?" She huffed and tossed her phone aside. "I just don't get why you need a whole party. People graduate all the time." Mom shot her a sharp look. "Chloe, don't start. Your sisters worked very hard for this." Chloe shrugged, but I could feel her irritation burning quietly. That's how it always was. If the spotlight wasn't on her, she'd find a way to dim it for everyone else. Still, I brushed it off. Tomorrow was going to be my day, and I wasn't going to let anything ruin it. Dad came in later that evening carrying a box of balloons. "Got these for tomorrow. What do you think, champ?" I smiled, my heart swelling. "They're perfect." He smiled back, but before I could soak in the warmth, Chloe groaned dramatically. "Wow, balloons, are we 5? Mom sighed. "Chloe, enough. You could try being supportive for one day." "I am supportive," Chloe said, crossing her arms. "I just think maybe it's a little over the top. Lily gets praised for everything. Maybe if I got half this attention—" "Chloe," Dad interrupted sharply, "this isn't about you." The room went silent. I felt that familiar awkward tension sink in, the one that always appeared when Chloe felt overshadowed. It was as if joy itself wasn't allowed to exist in this house unless she approved of it. After dinner, while everyone retreated to their rooms, I stayed up a little longer, sitting by the window with my gown draped across my lap. It felt surreal running my fingers along the fabric. I thought about the long nights in the library, the anxiety before exams, the constant push to prove I was capable. This moment, this celebration, wasn't just for me. It was for every version of myself that had fought to get here. Still, something about the night felt uneasy. The laughter that usually filled our house before big events was missing. Even the way my parents spoke to me, kind but distracted, hinted at something unspoken. Around midnight, I heard faint voices coming from the kitchen. My parents were talking softly. I shouldn't have eavesdropped, but curiosity got the better of me. "Maybe we should tone it down a bit," Mom whispered. "Chloe's been really upset lately. She feels invisible." Dad's voice followed, tired. "It's one night, honey. Let Lily have her moment," Mom sighed. "You know how Chloe gets." She's been crying again. "I just don't want a scene tomorrow." A pit opened in my stomach. "Crying? Over what? My graduation?" I quietly tiptoed back to my room, heart heavy. Why did Chloe's feelings always have to come at the expense of mine? It wasn't fair, but I'd grown used to it. Part of me hoped that, for once, they wouldn't let her mood ruin something important. I set my alarm for 6 a.m., trying to push the conversation from my mind. Tomorrow would be different, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd finally stand on that stage, hear my name called, and maybe, just maybe, my family would feel proud instead of conflicted. As I turned off the lights, my phone buzzed with messages from friends. "Can't wait to celebrate you tomorrow." "You did it, girl." So proud. I smiled softly at the screen, letting their words fill the space where my family's support should have been. The gown hung on the back of my chair, gleaming faintly in the streetlight filtering through the window. I closed my eyes and imagined applause, laughter, and the warmth of being truly seen. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to dream that maybe, just maybe, everything would go right. But deep down, somewhere beneath that fragile hope, a quiet voice whispered that tomorrow might not turn out the way I imagined, and I had no idea just how right that voice would be. Sunlight crept through my curtains far earlier than I expected. For a moment, I just lay there, smiling to myself. Today was the day. The day I'd been dreaming about for years. The day I would walk across that stage, finally be recognized for every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of effort I'd poured into earning my degree. I got up, humming quietly as I straightened my gown, making sure the folds were perfect. My cap sat neatly on the dresser, and my shoes, freshly polished, gleamed under the morning light. Everything felt right. I wanted this day to begin with joy. But as soon as I stepped into the hallway, the silence felt wrong. The house was too still. No scent of breakfast, no chatter from Mom, no clinking dishes. Just an uncomfortable quiet that made my stomach twist. I walked into the kitchen and froze. Mom was standing by the counter, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Dad sat at the table with a cup of coffee, looking as though he hadn't slept all night. And Chloe, she was there too, wearing one of her oversized sweatshirts, her hair messy, her eyes glued to her phone as usual. "Good morning," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Big day today, huh?" Mom glanced up briefly. "Lily, sit down for a minute. We need to talk." My heart sank. "Talk? About what?" Dad cleared his throat, looking everywhere but at me. "Your mother and I were thinking, maybe we should reschedule the celebration tonight." I blinked. "Reschedule? What do you mean reschedule?" Mom sighed, her tone careful, almost rehearsed. "We think it's better to postpone your graduation party. Just for now." The smile on my face vanished. "Postpone? Why?" "Everything's already planned. The food, the decorations, my friends." "Lily, please," she interrupted softly, as if I were overreacting. "It's just, Chloe's been feeling really down lately." I stared at her. "What?" "She's been struggling, sweetheart," Mom continued. "All the focus on your graduation, the attention, the preparations, it's been hard for her. She feels like she's disappearing." I turned to Chloe. She wasn't crying, wasn't even looking at us, just scrolling her phone, lips twitching slightly. "So you're canceling my celebration?" I said slowly. "Because she feels left out?" "It's not canceling," Dad said quickly, though his tone betrayed guilt. "It's just a pause. We'll celebrate later, I promise. Maybe next week? Next week?" "My graduation is today, Dad." He rubbed his temples. "Lily, we just don't want to make things worse. Chloe's been having a really rough time emotionally. You know how sensitive she is." Chloe finally looked up, her eyes wide with fake innocence. "It's okay," she said softly, almost saint-like. "You don't have to cancel anything for me. I'll just stay in my room while everyone's having fun." Mom's expression softened instantly. "Honey, no. We're a family. We can't celebrate while one of us is feeling hurt." Something inside me cracked. "So, you're doing this for her feelings?" "What about mine?" Mom frowned, her voice lowering. "Lily, this attitude isn't helping. You're being very self-centered right now. I know you're excited, but sometimes we have to think of others too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Self-centered? After everything I'd done to make them proud? After years of being the quiet, responsible one while Chloe got away with everything? I looked between them, my mother's disappointed face, my father's tired eyes, my sister's barely concealed smirk, and suddenly the air felt too heavy to breathe. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "After all the work, after everything I've done, you're just canceling my day?" Mom sighed. "We'll make it up to you. Maybe we can have a small dinner instead, just us." I stepped back, shaking my head in disbelief. "Don't bother." Dad stood up, trying to calm me down. "Lily, please don't make this a big deal." "A big deal?" I laughed, though it came out hollow. This was supposed to be the biggest day of my life, Dad. You don't even know how much this meant to me. Mom's voice sharpened. Lower your tone. You're overreacting. It's just a celebration. Just a celebration. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Just a celebration. As if it hadn't been the dream I clung to every night when I felt like giving up. As if it wasn't my one chance to feel like I finally mattered. I turned and walked back toward my room, ignoring Chloe's barely concealed whisper. Drama queen. In my room. I sat on the edge of my bed, still holding the graduation cap I'd been so proud of moments ago. The silence outside my door felt suffocating. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything to make them understand how much they'd hurt me. But I knew it wouldn't matter. It never did. Through the window, the morning sun looked so bright and warm, but inside I felt hollow. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, the cap, the gown, the trembling lips trying to hold back tears. No one was coming to celebrate me. Not my mom, not my dad. And as I picked up my keys, I whispered to myself, then I'll celebrate alone. I walked out the door quietly, without saying goodbye. The day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life had already been stolen from me, and I didn't even know yet how much more painful it was going to get. The air outside was crisp, filled with the hum of excitement. Groups of graduates in black gowns and bright smiles posed for photos under the banners that read, "Congratulations, Class of the Year." I stood among them, but it felt like I didn't belong. Everyone around me was surrounded by laughter, proud parents snapping pictures, siblings cheering, friends waving handmade signs. My own hands gripped the edges of my graduation cap so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I was here. I had made it. But I was completely alone. When I'd walked out that morning, no one had followed me. Not even to wish me luck. Mom didn't call out from the kitchen. Dad didn't ask if I needed help carrying my things. Chloe didn't even look up from her phone. I had simply walked through the door, closed it quietly behind me, and left, like a stranger leaving someone else's home. Now, standing in the middle of the crowd, I felt like an outsider in my own success. I spotted my best friend, Jenna, across the courtyard. Her parents were hugging her, crying tears of joy. She caught sight of me and waved enthusiastically. "Lily, over here!" I forced a smile and walked over. "Congratulations," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Where are your parents?" "I thought you said they were coming early." "They couldn't make it," I lied quickly. "Something came up." Jenna frowned, clearly not believing me, but she didn't push. She just nodded and said, "Well, I'm proud of you. You did it." When the ceremony began, I took my seat among the graduates. The crowd's cheers rose as names were called, a wave of joy that seemed to move through everyone but me. When my name echoed through the speakers, "Lily Turner." I stood, walked across the stage, and shook the dean's hand. Cameras flashed, applause thundered, but it all sounded distant, muffled, like I was hearing it from underwater. No one called my name from the audience. No one clapped louder for me. No one stood, just silence, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there. As I walked off the stage, I kept my head high, forcing myself not to cry. The photo booth at the exit had a long line of smiling graduates posing with their families. I stood at the edge for a long moment, then quietly stepped aside. Instead, I took out my phone and snapped a selfie. Me, in my cap and gown, the stage behind me, the crowd blurred into brightness. My eyes looked tired, the smile forced. But it was proof that I had been here, that I'd made it, even if no one else cared. After the ceremony ended, Jenna found me again. "Hey, we're all going to lunch with our families. Do you want to come?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say yes, to feel like I belonged somewhere. But I didn't want to sit at a table surrounded by parents celebrating their children, while mine pretended I didn't exist. "I think I'll just go home," I said softly. "You sure?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Yeah. I just need some quiet." She gave me one more hug before running off toward her family. their laughter echoing behind her. I walked to my car slowly, the weight of the gown dragging on my shoulders. The parking lot was almost empty now, sunlight glinting off windshields. I sat in the driver's seat and just stared. My diploma lay on the passenger seat, the thing I'd worked so hard for. The thing that should have felt like victory, instead, it looked like a reminder of everything I'd lost. I opened my phone out of habit. Maybe Mom had texted, maybe Dad had changed his mind. But there it was, a new notification. Mom, we decided to take Chloe out for lunch. She's been really upset lately. We'll celebrate your graduation when things settle down. I froze, rereading it over and over, my throat tightening until I couldn't breathe. They had gone to lunch. Without me, with her. I could almost picture it, Chloe sitting between them, smiling sweetly, pretending to be fragile while my parents fussed over her. The thought burned. I set my phone face down on the seat and leaned my head back against the steering wheel. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. All those nights I'd studied while they were asleep. All those times I'd tried to make them proud. And it had come down to this. They couldn't even pretend to care for one day. I cried quietly for a long time, the sound of laughter and car engines fading around me until there was only silence again. When I finally lifted my head, my reflection in the rearview mirror looked different, older, tired, but beneath the sadness, there was something else. A flicker of anger, not the wild, destructive kind. The quiet, heavy kind that sits in your chest and hardens into resolve. I wiped my tears, picked up the diploma, and whispered to myself, I did this for me, not them. As I drove away from the university, the campus disappeared in the mirror, a blur of color and noise fading into distance. I didn't know where I was going yet, but one thing was certain. I couldn't go home. Not tonight. Not after this, because if I did, I knew they'd pretend like nothing had happened. Like my graduation, and my pain, were just another inconvenience, and I was done pretending. The sun was already sinking when I finally drove home. The light outside was warm and golden, the kind of light that used to make our backyard glow. The same backyard I had spent days decorating for a celebration that would never happen. As I turned into the driveway, I felt an odd mixture of exhaustion and defiance. Maybe, just maybe, my parents had realized what they'd done. Maybe they'd be waiting to apologize, to say they were proud after all. But the moment I stepped inside, any trace of hope shattered. The house wasn't quiet. It was loud. Laughter echoed from the living room, cheerful, careless, and horribly out of place. I froze in the hallway. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Chloe, sitting together on the couch, watching one of Chloe's TikTok videos on the TV. She was giggling at herself, holding her phone up as my parents cheered her on. My stomach twisted. The decorations I had hung up the night before, the banner, the fairy lights, were gone. The tablecloth had been folded, the balloons deflated and shoved into a trash bag by the kitchen door. Everything I'd prepared for my celebration had vanished. "Hey, Lily," Dad said brightly when he noticed me, as if nothing had happened. "You're home early. How was the ceremony?" The words hit me like a slap. Home early? I'd been gone all day. They hadn't even noticed. Mom looked up from her phone. "Did you have fun? Did Jenna's parents come?" she asked casually, her tone syrupy sweet. The same tone she used when trying to smooth over something ugly. I stood there for a moment, trying to find my voice. "You canceled my party," I said quietly. "And then my voice cracked. "You threw one for her?" Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's not a party, Lily. We were just hanging out." "Really?" I said, my voice trembling. "Because it looks like you're celebrating just fine." Dad sighed, already impatient. "Lily, please don't start. We didn't throw anything. Your sister was feeling down, so we thought it would be nice to spend some time together. That's all." "After canceling my graduation celebration," I said bitterly, because she wasn't getting enough attention. Mom stood up, crossing her arms. "You're overreacting again. You need to understand that Chloe has been struggling lately. Struggling? I repeated, incredulous. What exactly is she struggling with, Mom? That someone else in this house might matter for 5 minutes. Chloe gasped dramatically. Wow, so now I'm the bad guy because you can't handle not being the center of the world. My jaw clenched. Chloe, you've always been the center of the world. Every holiday, every birthday, every family trip. It's always about making sure you feel special. And when it's not, you ruin it for everyone else. Enough, Dad's voice boomed. That's not fair. I turned on him, the years of quiet compliance finally cracking apart. Not fair? You canceled the one day that was supposed to be mine, the one thing I worked my entire life for, because she pouted about not getting attention. How is that fair? Mom's face hardened. Don't speak to your father like that. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. You both keep saying she's sensitive, that she needs to be handled carefully. But what about me? Did it ever cross your minds how it felt to sit alone at my graduation while everyone else's parents were cheering? Did it? For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence felt heavy, suffocating. Then Chloe muttered under her breath, God, this is so dramatic. That was it. The final snap, dramatic? I repeated, tears burning in my eyes. You think it's dramatic to want my parents to care about me? To not have my day stolen because you can't stand not being the favorite for once? Chloe looked startled. Maybe because for the first time, I wasn't backing down. Mom shook her head, exasperated. You're being ungrateful, Lily. You have everything. You always have, I laughed bitterly. Everything? You mean the privilege of being ignored? The honor of pretending I'm fine while you all treat me like an afterthought? I looked around the room, at the half-empty chip bowls, the soundless TV, the faces that once made up my entire world, and I realized there was nothing left to fight for. Enjoy your family time, I said quietly, grabbing my purse. You can have it all to yourselves. Dad stood up. Where are you going? Somewhere I don't have to compete just to be loved. I walked toward the door, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Chloe called out behind me, Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic! But this time, I didn't turn back. Outside, the sky was streaked with pink and orange, the kind of sunset that would have felt beautiful on any other day. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in, feeling the weight of years lift off me. When I finally started the car, my hands trembled, not from sadness, but from something sharper, freedom. As I drove away, I saw our house shrinking in the rearview mirror, the same house where I had spent my whole life trying to earn their love, and for the first time, I let it go. The first few days after I left home felt like stepping into someone else's life, quiet, uncertain, and strangely light. I stayed with my best friend, Jenna, who didn't ask many questions, just handed me a spare key and said, Stay as long as you need. Her apartment was small, a single bedroom and a living room filled with secondhand furniture. But to me, it felt like freedom. There were no tense silences, no careful words, no tiptoeing around someone else's feelings. Just peace. On the first morning, I sat at her tiny kitchen table, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, staring out the window at the city below. Cars rushed by, people hurried to work, the world moved on, and for the first time, I realized that I could too. Still, the ache lingered. The quiet moments were the hardest. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, expecting a message from Mom, an apology, something. But it never came. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from my family stayed unbroken. I found a part-time job at a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, but the smell of paper and ink comforted me. I'd always loved stories, maybe because they were the only places I ever felt truly seen. The manager, a gentle older woman named Marianne, hired me on the spot after seeing my degree. You've got kind eyes, she said. People trust kind eyes. It was a small thing, but it made me smile, something I hadn't done easily in a while. Every evening after work, I'd walk home, buy myself cheap takeout, and sit by the window to read. The loneliness still pressed against me sometimes, but it was different now. Not sharp, not suffocating. Just quiet. Healing. One night, Jenna came home from work to find me surrounded by books and notebooks. "Are you writing again?" she asked, grinning. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I forgot how good it feels," she smiled knowingly. "Looks like someone's finding herself again." Maybe she was right. Maybe that's what this was, rediscovering the version of me that had been buried under guilt and disappointment for years. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. My university emailed to inform me that I'd been nominated for a graduate scholarship program, one that could fully fund my master's degree out of state. I stared at the email for a long time, rereading the words until they blurred. My hands trembled as I forwarded it to Jenna. She burst into the room seconds later, screaming, "Lily, this is huge! You have to do it!" I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But part of me hesitated. What if my parents find out? What if, Jenna cut me off gently, what if you stop living for their approval and start living for yourself? Her words sank deep. That night I lay awake thinking about everything I'd lost and everything I might still gain. For so long, I'd believed my worth depended on how much my parents noticed me. But what if it didn't? What if my validation didn't need to come from them at all? The next morning, I sent my acceptance email. The weeks that followed were filled with change. I started saving every bit of my paycheck, planning my move, building a life that was mine alone. Sometimes I'd scroll past old pictures of my family, birthdays, vacations, moments that looked happy from the outside, and feel that familiar sting. But now it was softer, distant. One evening, as I closed up the bookstore, Marianne handed me a small wrapped package. "Graduation gift," she said with a wink. Inside was a leather-bound journal, embossed with my initials. "For writing new beginnings," she added. I almost cried right there. Back at Jenna's apartment, I opened the journal and wrote the first words that came to mind. I spent years trying to earn love from people who didn't know how to give it. Now I'm learning to love myself enough to stop needing theirs. The pen hovered above the page for a moment, and then I smiled. A quiet, genuine smile that came from somewhere deep inside. I wasn't healed completely. The wounds were still there, invisible but real. But every step I took away from that house, from their disappointment and favoritism, felt like freedom blooming inside my chest. By the time I received my travel documents for graduate school, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: pride. Not the kind that came from being praised or recognized, but the kind that comes from surviving. From standing on your own 2 feet after everyone expected you to crumble. That night, I framed my diploma, the same one I'd held alone in my car on graduation day, and hung it on the wall above my desk. It didn't matter that no one clapped for me that day, because I was finally learning to clap for myself. It had been nearly a year since I'd last seen my family when I received the message that would reopen every wound I'd tried so hard to close. It was a text from my mom. "Your sister's engagement party is next weekend. We'd like you to come. Everyone will be there." For several minutes, I just stared at my phone. My chest tightened, memories flooding back. The canceled graduation, the silence that followed, the realization that they had moved on without a trace of regret. Part of me wanted to delete the message. Another part wanted to go, not for them, but for me. To face them, to prove that I wasn't the same broken girl who drove away crying that night. Jenna noticed the shift in my expression as I sat at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. I handed her my phone. She read the message, sighed, and looked at me with concern. "You don't owe them anything, Lily." "I know," I said quietly. "But maybe I owe it to myself." She didn't argue. She just nodded. "Then go. But on your terms." The day of the engagement party, I stood outside my parents' house, the same house I'd once called home. My heart raced as I gripped the small gift bag in my hand, more for civility than sentiment. When I stepped inside, laughter filled the air. People mingled with champagne glasses, music played softly, and in the center of it all stood my sister, Grace, radiant in a sparkling white dress. She saw me before my parents did. Her eyes widened slightly, surprise, maybe guilt. Then she smiled tightly. "Lily, you came!" I forced a small smile. "Congratulations, Grace." Before I could say more, my mother approached, her face frozen in polite shock. "Lily," she said slowly, as if my name tasted unfamiliar. "You look—" "Well, I am," I replied. "Better than ever, actually." Dad appeared behind her, his expression unreadable. He nodded stiffly, then turned back to the guests without another word. For a moment, I wanted to run. But I stayed. I refused to let their discomfort push me away this time. I wandered to the buffet table, grabbing a glass of sparkling water. The same relatives who once gushed about Grace's every accomplishment were now whispering in small clusters, sneaking glances at me. I could hear snippets of conversation. "That's her? The one who left?" As if I were some scandalous family secret. But I didn't shrink this time. Instead, I smiled politely and introduced myself with confidence. I told them about my scholarship, my upcoming move, and the bookstore job I loved. Some of them seemed genuinely impressed. Others looked confused, as though success without parental approval didn't count. At one point, Grace approached me again, her voice lower now. "Listen, I'm glad you came, but please don't bring up the whole graduation thing tonight, okay? It's not the time." I looked at her flawless hair, her perfect dress, her carefully constructed world, and felt a calm settle over me. "I'm not here to talk about the past, Grace," I said softly. "I've already moved on from it. I hope someday you can too." Her expression faltered, confusion flickering across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but I turned away, walking toward the backyard where fairy lights shimmered above the garden. That's when something unexpected happened. My aunt, one of the few family members who had always been kind, approached me with misty eyes. "I'm proud of you, Lily," she said quietly. "You've grown into such a strong young woman. Don't let them make you doubt that." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I smiled, genuinely this time. "Thank you. That means a lot." For the rest of the evening, I stayed just long enough to prove something. Not to them, but to myself. I could stand in that house, surrounded by people who once dismissed me, and feel nothing but peace. Before I left, I found my mom near the kitchen, organizing gift boxes. "I'm heading out," I said. "Thanks for the invitation," she hesitated. "You're leaving already?" "Yes. I have an early flight tomorrow. I'm starting grad school." Her eyes widened, surprise flickering for the first time. "Oh, you didn't tell us." I met her gaze calmly. "You didn't ask." There was a long silence. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. But she just nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. I turned and walked out the door. Not with anger, not with regret, but with freedom as I reached my car. The cool night air brushed against my skin, carrying the faint sounds of laughter from inside. I looked back at the glowing windows, that house full of people who had never really seen me, and then I smiled. Because I finally understood something. I didn't need their recognition to feel worthy. I didn't need their love to feel whole. I had built a life without them, and it was more beautiful than anything they'd ever imagined for me. As I drove away, the road stretched out ahead, wide and endless. My diploma sat on the passenger seat beside my packed suitcase, a silent reminder of how far I'd come, and for the first time in a long, long while, I whispered to myself, "I'm proud of you, Lily, and I meant it."